Utility for utilitarians means happiness. The idea of the ethical action is the one that causes most total happiness or the least happiness combined between all people or most people. It's that good is whatever creates happiness and wrong creates suffering or pain. All choices must be related to furthering the cause that is mostly human species longevity or the pleasures and happiness of most humans. Ethical codes are based around of the highest order. It could be that you yourself is the highest and for the others, the intentions are the highest of matter. But for the utilitarians, it is the action that is done that matters the most of all. The value of our actions can be determined upon the result or the outcome and how this outcome promotes happiness and reduces pain and sadness. The utilitarians will make a calculation as to what the max happiness is. So basically, utilitarianism is the view of morality that is based around consequences, and these are results from actions that lead to happiness that is good, and these actions that leads to suffering which is evil or bad. Whatever prevents suffering is good, and whatever prevents happiness is bad. So, utilitarianism advances objective standards for moral distinctions. It is something that is done that should maximize the collective human happiness. However, utilitarianism isn't all good as of the present or today, which makes it why it is not practiced commonly as much anymore. The disadvantage of being a utilitarian is that it does not consider any other factors besides happiness. It is also it creates unrealistic perspective for society. It can be unpredictable and relies on people for decisions. It relies on multiple definitions of happiness, which can be difficult to determine what happiness is if we go from one group to another group or a person to person. Some will have different happiness and another will be bad. There are three main principles that utilitarianism follows that becomes the structure for society. These are the actions that are right if only the consequences maximize whatever is good, and wrong if they produce unhappiness or pain. This makes it some type of consequentialism, as the morality of the action is decided if it is right or wrong based on its consequences. The action is better if it produces more happiness, and this action does not produce more pain, so this action will be better. Another principle is that the only thing that is good in society is happiness. Pleasure is the only thing that has intrinsic value. A world is better, which means a world is better if it exists and it is good by itself. The third is that actions are only correct if they maximize the pleasure. The most or for the majority of people that this action can be able to affect. Everyone's happiness counts equally. However, in the past, this means that some lives were simply more valuable and important than the rest. So, for example, rich people's lives or people who work for the government are more valuable, or people who work in medicine, for example, doctors, are more valuable and more important than the average person or the normal individual that lives in society. However, if we go deeper, we could find act utilitarianism and also rule utilitarianism. So act utilitarianism, which is basically the third principle I mentioned, which means to do something that creates the most happiness. People here think that one's action is better for people to follow. However, people can find exceptions to this. We can see that, for example, stealing will cause more pain and following traffic rules will cause happiness. But they might find exceptions if we base it for according to how the experience of an individual, which they might find, which they may be able to find, for example, stealing that will cause happiness for them, and following traffic rules will possibly cause pain for them. And for rule utilitarians, however, is to do something that the whole society would do, which is to create the most happiness. So, if we take, for example, a rule utilitarian would look at the bigger image and follow the rule that makes most happiness, as if they think that they made the rule themselves for society. So, if stealing causes pain, then they never steal. If following traffic rules makes happiness, then they will always follow it. Unlike act utilitarians, where they can find an exception by being able to see a situation where stealing would cause greater happiness, and rule utilitarian would refrain from stealing and would follow the rule. A different example would be if I were to buy snacks to eat, but then I encounter a big beggar on the way there, but then I give the money. I will instead, to him, it will create more happiness and less pain. But if I go to buy snacks again the next week and I encounter another beggar, then as an act utilitarian, I would keep giving my money every single time I encounter a beggar because it creates more happiness. But as a rule utilitarian, I would not give my money away every time I buy snacks, as I have already done it in the past. For an example for utilitarianism as a whole, an example would be road widening in our neighborhood area. We demolish about 8 houses to build the road, and this would make the lives of those 8 families worse and create more pain for them. However, widening the road would create more overall happiness for the society. Therefore, for utilitarians, this will be considered a good act. A more simple example is that a couple passed by me and noticed that they dropped a wallet containing a thousand peso bill. If I ignore it, both me and the couple would create more pain, as it affected both of us not getting anything. Thus, it is the worst choice that creates more pain. If I choose to keep the wallet, then I am happier, while the couple who lost it are sadder as they lost their wallet and I get some money to spend. However, if I return the wallet, the couple would be happier and I would also feel happier, as I feel good for the couple to get their wallet back, therefore being the best choice. Another example would be if my family were to put the pie in the fridge overnight, but if I eat it all by myself, everyone would be sad. And if I eat it without everyone, I will be happy, and my family will be happy. I might be less happy, of course, but then if I were to eat it by myself, if I eat it by myself, but eating it with everyone will create more overall happiness and thus create the best possible choice. Another example was if I were to decide to not drive cars. It would benefit a lot of people as it reduces waste and pollution and thus creating more happiness. And if I were to use a car, it will only be me who gets happiness rather than the bigger picture. So based on utilitarianism, the best choice would be to not drive cars. With these examples, we can see the negatives of utilitarianism and why it just does not work on life in the present, as people become more caring about personal experiences that improves quality of life, and additionally, there are more beliefs other than utilitarianism that fits in more in the present, that has a different view on what is the best choice and what is right or bad.